This is a game more perverted than the Squid Game. The participants receive orders from the king every day, such as touching the school bell's body, kissing, having close physical contact, and so on. If the participants refuse to obey the orders, they will die in various ways. It is Nobuaki's second time participating in this game. In his first game, he let his girlfriend have intimate interactions with his best friend in order to let him survive. In the following game, what other surprising decisions will Nobuaki make? Let's see. At the beginning of the story, the male protagonist Nobuaki transfers to Kure Academy. His table-mate Natsuko is a very cheerful girl. She is interested in Nobuaki and talks to him all the time during class. But Nobuaki has a strange reaction, suddenly crying without saying a word. After class, several classmates gather around his desk, wanting to be friends with him. Unexpectedly, Nobuaki shows a great sense of unwillingness. He tells them to ignore him and runs out of the classroom. Natsuko catches up with Nobuaki and asks if he is afraid to make friends. Although Natsuko is very friendly, Nobuaki still does not want to communicate with her. When Nobuaki returns to the classroom, his classmates are discussing the upcoming sports festival. Natsuko does not want to give up approaching Nobuaki and offers to invite him to participate in the relay. The rest of the class also give Nobuaki a warm welcome and wish him to integrate into the group as soon as possible. After school, Nobuaki overhears two female classmates talking about Natsuko. Natsuko remains cheerful after the death of her parents, and they think she is very tough. Nobuaki doesn't understand why Natsuko is able to smile so brightly. In fact, he doesn't want to make friends because he lost someone important to him, and he feels very painful. After learning what happened to Natsuko, Nobuaki decides to learn from her and try to change his mentality. On the day of the sports festival, Nobuaki and Natsuko participate in the relay together and win the championship. It is a very good memory for Nobuaki, who hopes that nothing painful will happen again. Unfortunately, his wish is not fulfilled, and he receives a familiar email at midnight. This is a king's game that requires the whole class to participate, and those who receive the mail must complete the king's order within 24 hours. Nobuaki's first mission is to kiss Natsuko. Nobuaki was involved in the king's game in his previous school, and he knows very well how terrible the game is. There is no possibility of quitting the game, and anyone who disobeys orders will be punished. When Nobuaki arrives at school, he wants to tell his classmates about how terrible the game is. Unfortunately, his classmates think the game is a prank by Nobuaki. Nobuaki can't change his classmates' minds, and it pains him a lot. He experienced the same thing at his previous school. Before the first victim appeared, no one believed in the authenticity of the king's game. While Nobuaki is thinking about solutions, his classmate Aimi approaches him. Aimi is a good friend of Natsuko's. She mistakenly thinks that Nobuaki is the king and that it is him who offers Natsuko to kiss him because he likes her. Aimi doesn't agree with Nobuaki's approach, but she knows that Natsuko has a crush on Nobuaki and wants to help them become a couple. She offers to give Nobuaki Natsuko's contact information, but Nobuaki refuses. Aimi thinks Nobuaki looks a little strange and does not continue the conversation with him. Before the deadline arrives, Nobuaki arrives on the school playground and waits for the next text message. At this time, Natsuko suddenly comes to the playground. She cares about what Nobuaki said and wants to fulfill the king's order. Based on the performance of Aimi and Natsuko, Nobuaki realizes that Natsuko really likes him. He remembers someone he likes and is a little resistant to kissing Natsuko. Natsuko is very determined. She climbs over the fence and comes to Nobuaki. Natsuko has developed a crush on Nobuaki since the first time she met him. She confesses to him and offers to kiss him. As Natsuko completes the task within the time limit, the king's orders get more excessive. Almost every student in the class receives some special order. For example, Natsuko needs to have an intimate interaction with her male classmate Teruaki, and so on. In addition, the king warns them not to do useless things and not to sleep, otherwise they will be punished. Nobuaki immediately asks Natsuko to call her classmates and tell them not to sleep. Just then, the king sends an email again. Two students who have fallen asleep are punished and stop breathing forever. To avoid more accidents, Nobuaki changes his strategy. He asks Natsuko to call immediately and summon his classmates here. He then asks Natsuko about the nearest classmate and goes to the classmate's house alone. But by the time he arrives, the classmate has already been punished by the king. Nobuaki has no other classmates' addresses, so he can only go to the playground to meet Natsuko first. Halfway through, he receives a notification from the king that 6 more classmates have been killed. By the time Nobuaki returns to the playground, Natsuko has gathered more than 24 classmates. A male classmate named Satu is very upset with Nobuaki's strange behavior and asks him what is going on with all this. At this time, a female classmate suddenly says that she went to the house of another female classmate on the way to the playground, and she had been killed at that time. These words make the students at the scene feel very panicked. In order to have the situation under control, Nobuaki tells the truth. He used to be involved in the king's game. Everyone except him was killed. Aimi just spoke to Natsuko about love issues, because Nobuaki once refused to kiss Natsuko. She thinks Nobuaki is a bad person and he almost killed Natsuko. When the classmates learn about this, they are quite dissatisfied with Nobuaki. Satu accuses Nobuaki of being a murderer and teaches him a hard lesson. At the same time, the king sends a new email. Satu used violence against Nobuaki, which is against the king's order, and he will be punished. In the presence of everyone, Satu's blood spurts from all over his body and he dies. Nobuaki advises his classmates to help each other and stop disobeying the king's orders. Natsuko remembers the king's order to her that she must have an intimate interaction with Teruaki, but she just wants to do this with the person she likes. She throws herself on Nobuaki, hoping to get his help. Nobuaki is well aware of how brutal the king's game can be and they can't do anything but obey orders. A year ago, Nobuaki's class was involved in the king's game. At that time, the king asked a male classmate named Hideki to touch the body of the female classmate, Satomi. Hideki is very lustful and wanted to take the opportunity to do something to Satomi, but the other classmates felt that it was Hideki's prank and stopped him. The next day, the students learned that Hideki and Satomi had died at the same time, because they died in exactly the same way as in the email. Misaki, a classmate who received the order, began to fear that she would be killed as well. Misaki's boyfriend, Shoyuta, was convinced that all this was just a coincidence. He did not allow Misaki to have intimate interactions with his male classmate Daisuke as ordered by the king, but he never expected that Misaki and Daisuke would obey the king's orders. The next day, the king ordered everyone to follow Shuta's instructions. Shoyuta was very upset with Daisuke because of his intimacy with Misaki. When he arrived at the classroom, he not only beat Daisuke up but also ordered him to end his life. Daisuke was so frightened that he fled the classroom as soon as possible. Nobuaki was worried about Daisuke and followed him to the rooftop. At that time, Daisuke was in a very low mood. He believed that the deaths of Hideki and Satomi were not accidents and was afraid of being punished by the king. To comfort him, Nobuaki talked about his usual way of relieving stress. He loves music. No matter what troubles he encounters, he can cheer up when he hears the music. He was recently planning to form a band. Although he didn't have much musical talent, he had always dreamed of giving concerts at the Budokan. Coincidentally, becoming a musician was also Daisuke's dream. Nobuaki was pleasantly surprised. He decided to spend the whole day today with Daisuke doing band practice. Even if Daisuke really intended to end his life, he would stop him. So Nobuaki took his good friend Naoya to Daisuke's house. Daisuke comes from a wealthy family with a lot of expensive music equipment in his house. The three of them played music together and had a very good time. Daisuke and Nobuaki agreed to give him his bracelet if he survived. Unfortunately, the time on the clock in Daisuke's room was inaccurate. When midnight arrived, they thought Daisuke had survived safely. Daisuke was much more relaxed and intended to get a drink. After he left, Nobuaki received a call from his girlfriend, Chimi, and learned that it was not yet 12 o'clock. After hanging up, they received an email from the king showing that Daisuke had been punished. Nobuaki went to look for Daisuke immediately, but only saw his dead body. The past makes Nobuaki realize the importance of obeying the king. He believes that only by working together can they survive. Teruaki wants to have an intimate interaction with Natsuko in order to fulfill the order. Natsuko asks Nobuaki if there is any other way, but Nobuaki doesn't know anything. Teruaki takes the chance to grab Natsuko to fulfill the king's order. Unexpectedly, Natsuko suddenly stops refusing Teruaki. She pestered Nobuaki only to confirm a way to escape from the king's game, but she never expects that Nobuaki only knows to obey the order and cannot provide useful information. Natsuko believes that Nobuaki has lost his value. Not only does she take off her shirt on her own initiative, but she also claims that she is willing to do anything in order to survive. But before having close physical contact with Teruaki, she wants to teach Nobuaki a lesson. She deliberately takes Nobuaki to an unoccupied corner and asks others for help. Because Natsuko says she is attacked by Nobuaki, several male classmates team up to beat him up. Natsuko smiles with satisfaction when she sees Nobuaki being beaten. She then asks a female classmate named Misuki to send Nobuaki a text that says, "Die." It turns out that Misuki receives an order to send texts that say, "Die," to two people. Natsuko is very upset with Nobuaki, and she wants Misuki to order Nobuaki to die. Nobuaki feels very helpless and desperately wants someone to save him. While he is praying, Kenta, the last survivor, comes to the playground. Because Satu is covered in blood, Kenta doesn't recognize him. He notices the injured Nobuaki and the indifferent attitude of his classmates. He speculates that they hurt Nobuaki and is very angry. Kenta is a person with great justice. No matter what happens, he doesn't think they should do anything to Nobuaki. Natsuko finds Kenta annoying and asks Misuki to send a text to Kenta and Nobuaki. Misuki, not wanting to be a murderer, drops her phone to the ground. Because her phone is broken, she is temporarily unable to send texts. Natsuko loses interest in her and decides to take Teruaki elsewhere. Kenta thinks Natsuko is too cold and throws her to the ground. At this time, he hears Nobuaki's moaning, so he lets Natsuko go and decides to take Nobuaki to the hospital first. Misuki doesn't want to stay with her classmates and leaves with them. On the way to the hospital, Misuki tells her troubles and she doesn't want to die. Kenta tells Misuki that he can give orders to a student today. He will give himself in order to protect Misuki's life. If he breaks the agreement, he will die. Therefore, he will do his best to protect her. Misuki feels very moved. After comforting Misuki, Kenta consults Nobuaki about the King's game to find out if the game is related to him. Nobuaki always thinks it was he who brought the King's game to his class, and he feels very remorseful. Pressed by Kenta and Misuki, he recounts his previous experiences. Now let's continue the previous story, which tells what happened after Daisuke was killed. With Daisuke's death, Nobuaki determined the authenticity of the King's game, and he advised his classmates to follow the King's orders. Unexpectedly, the new order was to conduct a popularity poll between Kana and Naoya, and the one with low popularity would be punished. Nobuaki and Naoya are good friends, and he was ready to canvass for him with Chimi. While he was wooing Misaki, he met Kana. Kana and Misaki are very good friends, and she had always believed that Misaki would vote for her. Unexpectedly, Nobuaki knelt down to Misaki. He claimed that he had lost his friend Daisuke and that he couldn't lose Naoya again. Kana accused Nobuaki of trying to win others' sympathy with Daisuke's experience, thinking he was very mean. At this time, Naoya came to them. He was moved by Nobuaki's actions and refuted Kana's words, saying that Nobuaki was not mean and was just fighting hard for him. In the end, Misaki decided to vote for Naoya because Daisuke once saved her. Kana accused Misaki of betraying their friendship. In order to survive, Kana became so crazy that she even sold her body to several male classmates. Shoyuta accidentally discovered that Kana was having intimate interactions with male classmates. Out of guilt for Daisuke, he told Nobuaki about it. Nobuaki, worrying that Naoya would lose to Kana, took a mean approach. After the popularity vote began, Kana lost to Naoya by 1 vote. Kana could not accept this fact and forcibly jumped from the classroom window. But what she didn't know was that her punishment was to confess to someone she liked. Nobuaki followed Kana to the hospital accompanied by Naoya, hoping she would recover. He didn't know how to comfort Nobuaki and could only thank him. Nobuaki was so remorseful that he spoke out about what he did before the vote. It turned out that Nobuaki, in order to help Naoya, lied that he knew how to escape the King's game in order to woo those who might vote for Kana. Even if these people found out that Nobuaki was lying, they would not admit that they betrayed Kana. Nobuaki considered himself a demon and felt very guilty about Kana. Naoya reminded Nobuaki that the real demon was the king, not him. Nobuaki used dirty means just to protect him, and he wasn't a demon. Before midnight, Nobuaki waited for the results along with Chimi and Naoya. Unfortunately, Kana stopped breathing at 11:40, because Kana did not obey the order. The king asked Naoya to accept punishment in her place to have an intimate interaction with someone within the day. At that time, there were only 10 minutes left until 12 o'clock, and the only person who could help Naoya was Chimi. Nobuaki endured his sadness and locked Naoya and Chimi in the same room. Naoya was very resistant to having close physical contact with Nobuaki's girlfriend and refused to obey the order. Nobuaki had to knock Naoya unconscious and asked Chimi to help Naoya. Chimi agreed to Nobuaki and took the initiative to have an intimate interaction with Naoya. This incident caused great pain for both Chimi and Nobuaki. After completing the order, they hugged each other tightly. Chimi and Nobuaki made a pact that he could not die before her. After listening to Nobuaki's story, Kenta is very sympathetic to him. He, like Naoya, believes that Nobuaki is not a bad person. Nobuaki is grateful for Kenta's help and can't help but cry. To save everyone, Nobuaki decides to investigate at Yonkai village, where the King's game first appeared, more than 3 decades ago. Villagers in Yonkai village received a letter from the King's game. Since that day, there have been villagers who died every day, and Yonkai village has gradually become a ruined village. Nobuaki guesses that there are still records in the village from that time and wants to find a way to escape the game. Kenta and Misuki decide to go with him. On their way to Yonkai village, they have a discussion about the culprit behind the King's game. Nobuaki doesn't know the true identity of the king, and when he used to participate in the game, he always thought that the king was in the class. As it turns out, this guess is completely wrong. Nobuaki has a good friend named Nami. One day, Nami became the king of the day and gave the order to touch the real king, as she trusted Nobuaki's judgment and thought that the king was in the class. After the order was given, she could touch the whole class in turn. As long as the king was among her classmates, she would definitely receive an email notification when she touched the king. But it was a very risky move, and Nobuaki was worried about Nami's safety. Nami was determined. She loved Nobuaki and it was something she wanted to do for him. Unfortunately, she paid a terrible price for her decision. She touched all her classmates and received no email notification. Unable to accept this result, Nami went to the river alone and cried. Nobuaki was the first to find Nami. He blamed himself very much and offered to do anything for her. Nami had a very simple request. She only wanted Nobuaki to accompany her until midnight. Just before midnight, they held each other's hands, wanting to give each other power. In the next second, the king sent a punishment for Nami and a new order. Nami would live in darkness forever, and Nobuaki had to lose something important. Because Nami was blind, Nobuaki didn't want to worry her, lying that he didn't receive orders this time. Nami could tell that he was lying and secretly contacted Chimi. After learning of the order received by Nobuaki, Nami decided to help him. She avoided Nobuaki and went to the beach, trying to complete the order for him by ending her life. Then she called and asked Nobuaki if she was important to him. Nobuaki answered yes without hesitation. Nami told him that the feeling of being blind was more painful than she had imagined, and she was so scared that she didn't want to continue playing the king's game. Nobuaki assured her that he would protect her and be her eyes. Nami did not accept his kindness and hung up the phone directly. Nobuaki did not want her to sacrifice herself to help him fulfill his orders. He rushed home and smashed all the items he liked. At this time, Nami called to say goodbye to Nobuaki, saying that she was grateful to Nobuaki and would never forget the time they spent together. Nobuaki didn't want to lose Nami. In order to stop her, he even wanted to complete the order by breaking up with Chimi. But when he arrived at the beach where Nami was, what he saw was her confession written on the beach. Nobuaki burst into tears instantly. Nami protected him with her own life, and he would have a hard time forgetting her for the rest of his life. While crying by the sea, Nobuaki met a female classmate named Ria. Ria has a taciturn personality and is calm when things happen. When she saw Nami voluntarily ending her life, she thought she was very stupid, because Ria didn't seem to care about life or death at all. Nobuaki and her came into conflict. Ria enjoyed the king's game, where her goal was to defeat the king and become the winner. Even if the king ordered her to kill, she would fulfill the order. Ria thought that Nobuaki couldn't be her opponent, and she believed she would survive to the end. After parting with Ria, Nobuaki returned home and waited for 12 o'clock with Naoya, who came to him. He still couldn't accept Nami's death and felt very painful. What cheered Nobuaki up was a call from Yosuke, one of his classmates. Yosuke had been investigating news of the king's game. Recently, he discovered that the game victims would receive a special email from the king with only one word. Although he didn't know King's purpose yet, he thought it was likely a clue to ending the king's game. Naoya checked the phone Nami left when he heard it and found a hiragana in the email. Nobuaki shared the hiragana with Yosuke and asked if he knew Ria. Yosuke didn't know much about Ria, and he only knew that Ria was originally a girl who loved to smile. Until she was bullied by her biological father, she closed her heart. Yosuke told all the information he had, and asked Nobuaki to promise him one thing. If he got into an accident, he hoped that Nobuaki would help protect someone he liked. Kaori. Nobuaki acceded to Yosuke's request. When midnight arrived, the king sent an email commanding them not to do anything unnecessary in the game. 3 students violated the rules of the game, and 6 students did not obey orders, all of whom would die in different ways. Nobuaki noticed that Shoyuta had violated the rules and immediately called him. Unexpectedly, Shoyuta was being punished. Before he died, he only had time to say one word: refuse. When Naoya heard it, he remembered a very important clue. He had heard Shoyuta and 2 boys yesterday discussing the rejection of the king's mail. But as we all know, they can't quit the king's game halfway. Their behavior of refusing to receive the mail violated the rules, and they paid a terrible price. While they were discussing the rules of the game, another classmate was punished for not following orders. Nobuaki was worried about Chimi. Because Chimi hadn't answered the phone, he rushed to her house. At the same time, he asked Naoya to join him in informing other students not to refuse emails or cancel their mobile phone numbers. The first person notified by Nobuaki was Hiroko. For safety reasons, he asked Hiroko to try not to do anything, but he never expected that Hiroko would still be punished. Hiroko couldn't accept the result and called Nobuaki to ask why. Based on Hiroko's crying, Nobuaki guessed that the unnecessary thing in the email referred to crying. As long as someone cries, they are punished. After Hiroko's death, Nobuaki received a call from his classmate Hirofumi. Hirofumi was a crybaby, and he was also punished. He said goodbye to Nobuaki and thanked him for helping him during this time. Nobuaki regretted that he didn't guess the truth sooner. In order to prevent the tragedy from happening again, he hurriedly told Naoya that crying would be punished, and advised everyone not to read the mail, as when they saw the news of their friend's death, they may cry. After hanging up the phone, Nobuaki was exhausted. That's when he received a call from Yosuke. Yosuke found an important clue to ending the King's Game. He discovered that the King's Game had been played in Yonkai Village more than 30 years ago with 0 survivors. Yosuke thought there must be more clues in Yonkai Village and asked Nobuaki to go and investigate the truth as soon as possible. While he had just received the punishment notice and could no longer look for clues, Yosuke told Nobuaki to protect Kori, and then he hung up and intended to send information about Yonkai Village to Nobuaki. At this time, Yosuke was punished, and he sent the email at the last minute of his life. He would love to hear Kori's voice again, but he didn't have a chance anymore. Nobuaki was worried that Kori would cry after she saw the email telling about the punishment of Yosuke, and immediately called to remind her not to cry, not to look at her mailbox, and not to contact anyone. In addition, he lied that Yosuke was not punished. He had just heard Yosuke talk about Yonkai Village and intended to investigate. After dealing with Kori's affairs, Nobuaki packed his bags and set off to find the truth. In addition to Kori, he only told Naoya about his trip to Yonkai Village. When he was attacked on the road, he was very surprised. At first Nobuaki thought he had met the king, until Kori appeared with a weapon and accused Nobuaki of killing Yosuke. She believed that Nobuaki was the king, who killed all the classmates. Nobuaki was forced to explain the ins and outs of things to Kori. He lied to her because it was Yosuke's wish. Yosuke was very fond of Kori and didn't want her to be punished. Kori remembered Yosuke protecting her when she was a child and felt very moved. In fact, she also loved Yosuke, and she had always wanted to confess to him when the King's Game was over. After learning what Yosuke thought of her, Kori couldn't help but cry. She disobeyed the king's orders and was punished with heart paralysis. After Kori was killed, Ria suddenly appeared in front of Nobuaki. She discovered that Yosuke was investigating the village of Yunkai and wanted to obtain information about him. While Nobuaki was leaving, the students received new orders. In this order, they were required to elect a person who was about to roll the dice. The person who rolled the dice must choose the corresponding number of people based on the number rolled, and he would be punished with the people he chose. If no one rolled the dice or chose other people, everyone would be punished. There were 10 survivors currently, and in the worst case, they would roll a 6 and 3 survivors would be left. Naoya was very cowardly, and he couldn't contact Nobuaki and didn't know what to do. At this time, Ria sent an email to the survivors. She gathered everyone into the park to discuss the dice roll. The email was sent at 10 p.m. A female classmate voluntarily ended her life and was being treated in the hospital. Everyone except her rushed to the park. A male classmate named Abe, in order to survive, proposed to let his best friend Toshiyuki roll the dice. Toshiyuki was betrayed by his good friend and felt very distressed. Just when he decided to roll the dice, Nobuaki stopped him. Abe's actions were ridiculed by other classmates. Just when he found the situation very unfavorable to him, he held Chimi hostage, using her to threaten Nobuaki and Naoya to roll dice. To prove his determination, he stabbed Chimi. In order to save Chimi, Nobuaki took the dice from Toshiyuki. Unexpectedly, Naoya suddenly snatched the dice and threw the dice directly to the ground. The number he threw was 6, meaning he was going to choose 6 people to be punished. A male classmate named Keita suggested that Naoya choose the female classmate who was at the hospital. When Naoya rejected him, he accidentally called out his name, so Keita became the first to be punished. Immediately afterwards, Naoya named 3 people in a row. Abe was very excited and urged Naoya to name the remaining 2 as soon as possible. In order to save Chimi, Nobuaki asked Naoya to call out his name. At this time, Toshiyuki suddenly rushed forward and punched Abe. After Abe fell, Chimi regained her freedom. Toshiyuki was very unhappy with Abe's actions. He no longer wanted to participate in the King's Game and asked Naoya to call out his and Abe's names. Naoya followed his words. With the death of Abe and Toshiyuki, Naoya was also punished. At the last moment of his life, he expressed his gratitude to Nobuaki in the hope that he would overcome the king. After they received the email, Ria checked the victims' mobile phones and collected the information they received. Then she took out the laptop she carried with her and spoke out her findings. It was difficult to obtain all the information by her efforts alone, but with the information Yosuke found, she felt closer and closer to the truth. More than 30 years ago, there were a series of deaths of villagers in the Yonkai village, known as the King's Game. The order at that time was sent in the form of letters to the villagers. This caused great chaos at the time, and neither the police nor the government could do anything to stop it. Later, some researchers speculated that these events were caused by some kind of virus, and the bizarre method was a strong hint from the virus, as the human body, when given strong cues, destroys its own body cells. The King's Game was like some kind of suggestion taken to the extreme. The so-called suggestion was like an infectious disease. What was born from the Yonkai village was not extinct and continued to spread through the network. Ria tried to combine the victims' emails she and Yosuke had collected, but no useful information could be obtained. Suddenly, she found a bug in the King's Game program, intending to eliminate the virus. Unexpectedly, the king discovered Ria's actions and sent her a punishment email. Realizing that the bug she found was just a trap from the king, she calmly accepted the result. Before dying, she recounted her personal experience. Her father was a gifted programmer, and she inherited that talent. Unfortunately, her father was a pervert, and she had been bullied by her father for a long time and lived in hell every day. Later, her father took the initiative to end his life, and she got rid of that painful life. But her character was still affected, and she became reticent and lost faith in life, until she was involved in the King's Game. She enjoyed the game and was desperate to be a winner. Although she became a victim of the game, she hoped that Nobuaki and Chimi would defeat the king in her place. Back to the present time, it is worth mentioning that Nobuaki ends the story with Ria's death and does not continue to tell the story of the rest, as they are about to arrive in the Yonkai village. After passing through a wood, they arrive at the entrance to Yonkai village. Because the entrance is blocked by a pile of stones, they get in through the gap. Upon arrival at Yonkai village, Nobuaki is drawn to one of the houses. A plaque at the door shows that the family's surname is Honda, the same as Chimi's and Natsuko's. Nobuaki goes inside the house and finds a photo of Chimi and a letter. The letter writer appears to be Chimi's father. He said he regretted getting his daughters involved in the King's Game. To atone for his sins, he drove them out of Yonkai village. This letter puzzles Nobuaki, who never imagines that Yonkai village would be Chimi's hometown. At this time, he suddenly hears Kenta calling Misuki. Kenta and Misuki have been waiting for him at the door. Oddly enough, Misuki sneaks away while Kenta is not paying attention. While searching for Misuki, Kenta receives an email from the king that 7 classmates have been punished for not obeying the king's orders. Feeling very distressed, unexpectedly, Misuki suddenly appears behind him. She comes to say goodbye to Kenta. She loves Kenta and hopes that he will survive, so she decides to send herself and Natsuko a die email. Before Misuki leaves, Kenta hugs her. He also likes Misuki, and he doesn't want her to be punished, but he ignores one thing. That is, his mission is to protect Misuki. If she dies, he will die with her. To stop her, Kenta knocks her unconscious. Because there is no signal in the village, Kenta takes her to the vicinity of the signal tower. Then he uses Misuki's cell phone to send himself an email. Meanwhile, while searching for them, Nobuaki stumbles upon a notebook, as well as a decomposing corpse. Based on the photo inside the notebook, Nobuaki discovers that the body turns out to be the shared father of Chimi and Natsuko. That is to say, Natsuko isn't playing the King's Game for the first time. Nobuaki realizes that Yonkai village is more dangerous than he thinks and decides to leave as soon as possible with Kenta and Misuki. He notices a bright light near the signal tower and suspects that Kenta and Misuki are sending mail there. By the time Nobuaki arrives at the tower, Kenta has already sent the email. Unfortunately, because Misuki's old phone was broken by her, her new phone can't participate in the King's Game. In the end, both Misuki and Kenta are punished. While Nobuaki is grieving their passing, Kenta's cell phone suddenly rings. Nobuaki sees the caller ID and finds it is his name on it. Realizing that his phone has been picked up, the person who picks up the phone is Natsuko. She forces Teruaki to have an intimate interaction with her, fulfilling the king's order. Natsuko mocks Kenta for being very stupid. It is all over when Misuki's phone broke. Guessing that Nobuaki will be with Kenta, she makes the call on purpose. Since she carries Nobuaki's phone with her, she believes that Nobuaki will soon be punished by the king. After saying this, she hangs up the call, as if she enjoys putting Nobuaki under her control. Teruaki is so frightened that he takes the opportunity to hide in the bathroom. He speculates that Natsuko intends to kill the class and wants to call to alert the others. Unexpectedly, Natsuko notices his abnormality and breaks into the bathroom to snatch his mobile phone. Nobuaki doesn't know Teruaki is in danger. While waiting for the shuttle to arrive, he checks Natsuko's father's notebook, in which the phenomenon that the victim of the game will receive a word is mentioned. This is a bug in the king's game that even the king himself does not expect. Natsuko's father believes that this bug is the key to ending the game. After reading the notes, Nobuaki becomes more and more convinced that Ria's speculation is correct and decides to find a way to collect the words. At this time, Nobuaki receives a call from her female classmate Riona. Riona guesses that Nobuaki is with Kenta and calls him specifically to meet him. Nobuaki comes to her doorstep at her request. Not wanting her family to misunderstand their relationship, Riona takes Nobuaki to a nearby park. It turns out that Riona, while investigating the king's game, discovers a piece of news. Something similar has happened in other schools before, where the name Natsuko also appears. She has also researched Nobuaki's former school and finds that Ria sent an email containing words she collected. Pressed by Riona, Nobuaki explains that these words are the key to ending the game. Riona feels very surprised. The night before, she found Natsuko checking Sada's phone and was very curious, so she also checked the victims' mobile phones and collected the words they received. Interestingly, many of the words collected by her are the same as those of Ria, indicating that the words are common. Nobuaki realizes that none of his friends died in vain and is full of gratitude to Riona. Natsuko, who comes to them, sees this scene by chance. She summoned the survivors to discuss the latest king's order in the square, and now only Nobuaki and Riona have yet to arrive. Nobuaki remembers the notebook and offers to talk to Natsuko alone. He asks Natsuko if she has a sister who has been separated since childhood, and voluntarily reveals his relationship with Chimi. Natsuko is very indifferent. Even if Nobuaki and Chimi are a couple, she won't help him. Immediately afterwards, Nobuaki follows Natsuko to the square to join his classmates. Because Nobuaki has not yet read the latest king's order, Riona lends him her mobile phone. By order of the king, they have to cut off their fingers and give them to a certain person. One finger of the right hand is equivalent to 1 point, and one finger of the left hand is equivalent to -1 point. They can also give their points to others. Finally, the person whose points are a minus will be punished. Nobuaki finds that abstentions or giving points to themselves are not banned, and proposes to complete today's order peacefully. Teruaki is also in favor of peaceful means, but his phone is in Natsuko's hands, and Natsuko asks him to follow her orders. After the game begins, several classmates, including Nobuaki, decide to abstain. When it is Teruaki's turn, he suddenly offers to cut Nobuaki's hair first. Teruaki's dream is to become a barber. He wants to give Nobuaki a haircut before making a decision. After the haircut, Teruaki voluntarily breaks his right forefinger. Then he picks up the stone and breaks all the fingers on his left hand. He voluntarily destroys his dreams, giving Nobuaki 1 point, Natsuko -4 points, and Aimi a -1 point. If Natsuko doesn't want to be punished, she has to break 4 fingers of her right hand or ask someone else to give her positive points. Natsuko is very unhappy with Teruaki's actions. She once made a request to Teruaki that as long as he gave negative points to himself, she would give his phone back. She never thinks Teruaki would betray her. Teruaki says he never promises Natsuko and tells her a secret. He gave Aimi a -1 point because Aimi wanted to test her friendship with Natsuko. If Natsuko gives her a positive point, she will help Natsuko unconditionally in the future. Unexpectedly, Natsuko's actions disappoint her very much. She picks up the stone and breaks Aimi's right forefinger. Nobuaki hurriedly stops Natsuko. He thinks that Natsuko hurt her friendship with Aimi, who won't give her positive points. Natsuko is very confident. She believes that people are most easily manipulated when they are on the edge of a mental breakdown. As long as she puts herself in a desperate situation, Aimi will grant all her requests, so she deliberately tells Aimi that she will save her as before. These words remind Aimi of the beautiful memories between them. She believes that Natsuko wants to break her fingers only because she is driven to a desperate situation. Natsuko used to protect her, and now she wants to protect Natsuko too. Natsuko is very satisfied. She helps Aimi break her only remaining thumb and asks her to give her 1 positive point. Now Natsuko and Aimi all clear their points. Coupled with the fact that everyone else abstained, they fulfill the king's order. Although Teruaki lost his left hand, he has no regrets. After the treatment, the students gather together again. Nobuaki wants everyone to live together and not hurt each other. Teruaki trusts Nobuaki so much that he proposes to have Nobuaki as the leader and lead them through the orders. At this time, Natsuko raises an objection. She believes that only she can save herself, and there is no need to choose a team leader. Only one person survives this game. Instead of waiting for the king to issue an order, it is better to kill everyone. Nobuaki is very disappointed with Natsuko Natsuko and they have a heated argument. At this time, Riona asks a question. If Natsuko's statement is correct, why does she keep Aimi alive? Natsuko explains that she doesn't want to atone for what she did to Aimi. She and Nobuaki have completely different personalities and ways of behaving. In her last King's game, she killed the person she hated the most. What makes her feel most sad is that the person she wants to protect took the initiative to end her life. When she's recalling this painful past, she suddenly hugs Nobuaki. It isn't until midnight that she lets out laughter, because Natsuko used Teruaki's mobile phone to reject the king's mail. Teruaki is punished by the king, and she was stalling for time just now. Soon, Teruaki falls to the ground. He is glad that his best friend Ryu went to buy him a gift and doesn't see him die. In the last moments of his life, Teruaki hopes that Nobuaki will lead everyone to victory. With Teruaki's death, only 10 survivors remain. In the latest King's order, they need to run towards the summit of Mount Nagakabe. Every 8 hours, the person furthest from Mount Nagakabe will be punished. Among them, the best at running is a male classmate named Masatoshi. Unfortunately, he is pushed off the flyover by Takuya behind him during his run. Masatoshi is seriously injured and abandoned by his classmates. Although Nobuaki runs fast, he has been running with Riona and Aimi. The three of them are the slowest. Riona lets the two of them go first, and she will definitely catch up with them. Soon, Nobuaki and Aimi catch up with the team in front and learn about Masatoshi's injury and being left behind. Nobuaki is worried about Riona, and he asks Aimi to run with these classmates first, while he returns alone to find Riona. Unexpectedly, after merging with Riona, they meet the injured Masatoshi. Although Masatoshi is seriously injured, he doesn't want to give up so early. By reaching the beach, Masatoshi is exhausted. Nobuaki proposes to give Masatoshi a break to recover his stamina. They watch the sunrise together by the sea. Masatoshi accidentally falls into the sea because his physical strength is at its limit. Although Nobuaki jumps into the sea to save him, he still dies in the sea. Nobuaki feels very frustrated and wants to end his life as well. At this time, he remembers those good friends who have died. With their encouragement, Nobuaki regains his fighting spirit and climbs ashore. Riona has a crush on him. To comfort him, she hugs him tightly. After a short break, they continue their run towards the summit of Mount Nagakabe. Nobuaki speculates that the two of them are the slowest. As the first 8 hours approach, he lies about tying his shoelaces and stops behind Riona. As the person who is punished this time is Masatoshi, Nobuaki survives. Ryo guesses that Nobuaki wants to sacrifice himself and is very angry. She slaps him and offers to finish the race together, but for the next 8 hours, they don't catch up with anyone. As the second 8 hours approach, they have to decide who to sacrifice. Nobuaki deliberately proposes to decide by rock, paper, scissors. Although he wins, he claims that the winner has the right to decide which one to sacrifice. Finally, despite Riona's obstruction, he runs in the opposite direction. To their surprise, the person who is punished is not Nobuaki, but Aimi. Aimi is abandoned by Natsuko at the beginning of the game. Nobuaki has always been with her and has touched her very much. She knows that Nobuaki and Aimi are slower than her and has been deliberately running in the opposite direction. With her efforts, she becomes the victim in place of Nobuaki. After seeing the email, Nobuaki joins Riona again. While running, he recounts the ending of the last King's game. After Ria's sacrifice, the last order they received was to kill the person they loved the most within 5 minutes. Because they loved each other the most, Chimi took the initiative to end her life in order to keep Nobuaki alive. But he never expected that the King's game didn't end there. Nobuaki must choose between continuing with the King's game or being punished. Meanwhile, Natsuko is the first to reach the summit of Mount Nagakabe. In order to confuse others, she not only changes the direction of the sign, but also sets a trap. Takuya's speed is second only to Natsuko. Confused by the wrong road sign, he falls into Natsuko's trap and fractures both feet. The person behind Takuya is Yuna. After meeting Yuna, Natsuko deliberately tells her that the road sign is wrong, but Yuna doesn't trust Natsuko and goes down the wrong path. Immediately afterwards, Rina also goes down the wrong path and meets Takuya on the way. He grabs her foot with his hand and begs her to help him. Rina sees this as retribution for his killing of Masatoshi and does not help him. After Rina abandons Takuya, she meets Yuna. Yuna tells her that she has just taken the wrong path and intends to take another path. While they are about to be punished together, Yuna accidentally loses her footing and almost falls into the cliff. At first, Rina does intend to save her, but she worries that the rock will crack, prompting them to fall together, so she changes her mind and abandons Yuna. Soon, Rina reaches the top of Mount Nagakabe, where she meets Natsuko. Natsuko deliberately provokes her with words, causing her to lose her mind and fall into a cliff. After dealing with 3 people in a row, Natsuko decides to solve the remaining 4 people together. At this time, Nobuaki and Riona catch up with Ryu and Aya. Because Aya is injured, Nobuaki carries her on his back. After meeting Natsuko, Nobuaki knocks her down with all his might. When the four of them manage to reach the finish line, Natsuko catches up. After midnight, Yuna, Takuya, and Rina are punished for not following orders, and the survivors receive new orders. This time they are required to cut their own bodies and put the parts together to make a human doll. Ryu wants to be as brave as Nobuaki and Teruaki. In order to obey orders, he even knocks out Nobuaki, who may stop him. Natsuko takes the opportunity to give Ryu a chainsaw. She watches Ryu sawing off his own leg and then deliberately steps on it. Eventually, Ryu passes away due to excessive blood loss. Aya wants to avenge Ryu, but is killed by Natsuko with a chainsaw. At this time, Nobuaki regains consciousness. He thinks the order this time is something they can't do. Instead of completing the order, what they should do is find a way to end the game. At Nobuaki's suggestion, Ryona shows Natsuko the words they have collected. As long as they collect all the words, they can find the bug in the game. Unexpectedly, Natsuko has been collecting these words since the beginning of the game. After combining the words collected by the three of them, they get a sentence. To end the king's game, the lives of all participants must be sacrificed. As long as one person survives, the king's game won't end until humanity perishes. In other words, people who have participated in the game have the king virus in their bodies. Even if they survive, they will infect the people around them. All three of them have to die in order to save humanity. Natsuko is not willing to sacrifice herself and wants to live no matter what. When Natsuko and Nobuaki have a conflict, Ryona uses the chainsaw on Natsuko. Ryona likes Nobuaki and wants to take the opportunity to confess to him, but she never expects that Natsuko stands up again and kills Nobuaki with her last strength. Natsuko loves Nobuaki. To prevent Nobuaki and Ryona from being together, she ends Nobuaki's life with her own hands. At the end of the story, Nobuaki meets his good friends in heaven. Ryona can't accept this result. She takes Nobuaki's dead body, jumping into the sea. That brings the end of this anime. With Ryona's death, the king's game seems to end as well. In this anime, we see the dark side of humans. To survive, they did a lot to damage others. Nobuaki has been trying hard to protect his friends, but he's also losing his friends. The fact that Nobuaki sacrificed his girlfriend in order to save Naoya has raised a heated argument among the viewers. I want to ask you a question. If you were Nobuaki, would you make the same choice as him? Comment below to share your opinions. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give this video a like to help it out. Also, please subscribe to my channel. Your support can push me to make more recaps. Bye!